Area, I can see you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking at the Schottenstein edition of Ruth. It's
Ooh.
an interlinear translation.
Oh, I did. Yeah, the art scroll, basically, right?
Yeah, art school, right. And I was looking at chapter 3, verse 3, and I have a question. There's this word, sim lo tayich.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine garments, since we're talking about garments here.
Right.
And right after it, it writes in smaller fonts without vowels. And I'm wondering what's the reason for that?
That's a Ketiv and Qere. This is a phenomenon that is very common in the Hebrew, where there is a difference between the way a word is written and the way the word is read. If you open your, stay in the same book, okay, you can open chapter 1, verse 8, or you can open chapter 2, verse 1, or look at the example that you gave from chapter 3, just the following, the following words. You have a similar thing with v'yaradet. You should have a similar, like, different, two versions for that word. You should have another example in chapter 4 and in verse 4 and in verse 5 of the same chapter. Do you see how you have similar phenomena in these verses that I've mentioned?
Yeah, there's also a cough with looks like a accent mark after it.
Right. Sure. Yeah, these are the Ketiv and the Qere. Let me explain a little bit about this phenomenon. Okay. Ketiv and Qere are basically two Aramaic words. Okay. Ketiv, pronounced Ketiv. I just wrote it with a bet and a line underneath, but it is really pronounced like a V. Okay, it's a Ketiv and Qere. Okay, Ketiv means written, and Qere means either read or read. Okay, different opinions about the meaning of Qere here. I prefer read with.
Does that mean like read aloud, so reading to somebody, or just reading?
Read. Just a second. I'll explain and you'll understand. Okay. And if not, then ask again. I'll explain it in a different way. So Ketiv and Qere are like two traditions, okay, about usually a given word, okay, on how one should write it versus how one should read it, okay? Usually, the reading and the writing of the word are identical to one another, right? It is written in a certain way, and it should be read in a similar way. But sometimes in the Hebrew Bible, there is a difference between the Ketiv and the Qere, and I'll go with your example, okay, and show you how it looks in an actual manuscript. Okay. Okay. So you asked about chapter 3 and verse 3. So let's see this. Okay, very good. Chapter 3, verse 3. Okay. Okay, these are the instructions of by the way, Naomi to Ruth. And that's the verse. I'll just, okay. Now you can see the whole verse. I'll take the example of the word v'yaradet versus the Ketiv versus the Qere. Okay. Okay, this is, okay. Do you see this small circle above the word?
Yes.
This circle tells me, oh, we have a remark to be noted, okay, on the side. It's a marking of a marginal note, Okay, this marginal note is referring to this word. It tells me that while the written version, the Ketiv, is Veyaradeti with a yod here, it actually should be read according to the Qere. Do you see the kof here?
Mhm.
The letter kof. That means you should read it Veyarad. Oddly enough, the vowel pointing that should be applied to this word is already incorporated to the text that is inside the column and not marginal. So I know it's complicated, but the way this word should be read is by combining the letters here with a vowel pointing here. And all in all, when I see this word, when I read it in the synagogue, first of all, everybody's already asleep because it is done in after a night of learning. So everybody is asleep. They only know that the book of Ruth has like few chapters at the beginning. They don't know that it has 4 chapters. They don't know, they think it has only few verses, because after a few verses, everybody is asleep. But I hopefully am still awake. So I read it Veyarad, you see, because there is a patach, okay, or kamatz, patach, sheva, and a sheva. So even though there is a yod here, I don't read this veyaradti. There is a difference between the written version, the way it is written in the text, and the way it should be read. Now, printed editions, such as the art scroll you have in your hand or any other edition, have different ways of marking that difference. Everybody is more than welcome to open the whichever version of the Hebrew Bible they have and open Ruth chapter 3 verse 3 and see, okay, how it is marked in their own editions. Okay, I see that Robert, you have the Hebrew Reader's Bible, right? I'm just looking up if I'm guessing right. So it's not, you didn't show me the cover. you just kind of how it looks from the side. But you'll all note that there is some way by which it is marked. Okay, either one with a vowel pointing or without, either in parenthesis, or as it is on screen. If you have the BHS, it would be something akin to what you see on screen. So different editions have different ways of marking the difference between the Ketiv and the Qere, but they all mark that difference between the Ketiv and the Qere. Okay, there are some words that have a what we call a Qere perpetuum, a perpetual Qere. Okay, I'll give you the best example. Every time we see the word, this word in the Bible, okay, how do we read this word? We don't read it by these 4 letters. We read it as Adonai, right?
Right.
This is a difference between the way the word is written and the way that this word is read. This is a perpetual Qere. We don't have to have that remark every time, because we know there is a rule for every time we have it. I'll give you another example. Okay, how do we read this word?
Looks like shalom, except for the.
Yeah, you've got
Yerushalayim.
Yerushalayim, right? Yerushalayim. So if you look it up, you'll see that Yerushalayim is written without a yod, but we read it as if it is Yerushalayim. Okay? In when it is written without that yod. Okay? But the vowel pointing, let me show you, the vowel pointing does tell us that we should read it this way. Okay? This is the first mentioning of Yerushalayim in the Bible, in the book of Joshua. Okay. Vayhi chishmoa Adoni Tzedek melech Yerushalayim. So again, I'm showing you the word. You can see the chirik here that is hiding. Do you see the chirik, guys, that I've just circled in red?
Yes.
Even though we don't have the yod, we have the chirik that is supposed to be read under the yod that we don't see. I told you it's a complicated system. I didn't create it. I cannot take it up with Masoretis. Okay, these guys, 1,300 years ago, 1,200 years ago, that's the system they developed. It has advantages. I'm not getting into the details, but this is another example of a perpetual Qere, where we know that this word should be read Yerushalayim, and we have the vowel pointing for it. Okay. Yeah. So this is a little bit about the Ketiv and the Qere as far as the way we should deal with it. Now, there is a bigger question. Maybe I don't know if it's bigger, but definitely interesting question of why do we have this?
Real recording, please.
Oh, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. The question of why do we have it, but you didn't ask it, Gary, so I'm not going to talk about it.
I'll ask.
So, partly because I don't have a good answer, or I have few good answers, okay, which makes none of them very exceptionally good. What do I mean by that? I mean that we have, I think we have different answers for different situations. So there is no one explanation that can cover all the cases. For instance, I'll give you like few examples that are clear cut and obvious. Sometimes there was a word in the Bible that was rated R or rated, I don't know how they rated it back then. And so they changed it to be more palatable. Okay. You remember that when Rav Qere comes to Jerusalem to speak with the people, right? You remember that part? Okay, so Rav Qere speaks to the people, and the generals who are listening to him, what do they ask him to do?
To speak in Arabic, not in Hebrew.
Right, they ask Rav Qere, the representative of King Sennacherib, who is besieging the city of Jerusalem. They ask him, listen, Rav Qere, do us a favor, speak Aramaic, don't speak Hebrew. Do you remember his answer to them?
What I had to say is for all the people, not just for you.
Oh, you are giving us the really very nice washed, whitewashed, or I don't know which kind of washing it is, version of what he has to say.
He was insulting.
All right, he says something along the lines of, listen, I'm not talking to you, nor to your bosses. I'm talking to the people who have to eat their own stuff. Okay? and I'll show it to you in how it is in the Ketiv and the Qere. Okay, this is the relevant verse. Okay, in 2 Kings 18. Okay.
But it is mentioned in Isaiah also, no?
Also mentioned in Isaiah, also mentioned, you're right, in Isaiah 36, also mentioned in Chronicles, this story. Okay, this story is one of the most fascinating stories as far as comparing the different occurrences of this story within the Bible and with extra biblical sources. But that's not my focus at the moment. At the moment, I want to show you an example of how something that was too explicit was changed into something more implicit by the Ketiv and the Qere, by the Qere, okay? Where the Ketiv, the written version, was too explicit, it was changed by the Qere version. So, okay, Rav Shakeh is saying to the messengers of the king, do you think that to your master and to you, my master, sent to speak these words? And I'm starting here. You know what? Why should I read? Anyone wants to read directly from a manuscript that was written about 1,000 years ago?
I can try.
Go ahead.
Shalachni Adoni.
Oh, no. You see the here. We're starting with the second.
Hello.
Hello, that's a hey. I know it looks like a chet, but that's the way there. Hey.
And is that
Hello. That is
hello?
right. Go ahead.
Ayin Kof or Ayin Lam? Al. Oh, it's Al.
You see, when you write things, sometimes it's a little bit less like exact than you have in a printed book. Hello, Al.
Oh.
Again, it's a hey. It's a hey. Ha'anashim.
Anashim. Hayishvim.
Again, it's a hey. Hayoshavim.
Okay. Hayishvim al. Hachomech.
Hachoma. Here you can see the hey next to the chet. So
Oh
it's
yeah. Hachoma. Oh, that's like okay. Le'echol et horaycham.
so do you see the circle here?
Yeah.
It means that we read this. So if I'm reading the verse, al hachoma le'echolet tzo'atam, I'm taking the letters here, the tzadi, vav, aleph, tav, and mem, and I am applying the vowel pointing that we have here to the consonants here. So that would be tzo'atam. Okay, I'm taking, I know, again, it's a complicated system, but this is what we have. We cannot change it. Tzo'atam, so this I'm putting here, this I'm putting here, and this I'm putting here. All in all, I get the word tzo'atam.
Where do you get the tzadi from?
This is a tzadi.
That's not a nun.
No, it's a tzadi, like this. You see this?
Oh, okay.
That's a tzadi. Tzo'atam, meaning what came out of them. And the written version has something equivalent to their I'll be explicit, but this is what it is. The written version says the people who are sitting on the wall, who are living on the wall or sitting on the wall, who have to eat their shit. Feces. Yeah, but I want to be explicit on purpose to show you what they did. They took the explicit term and they changed it to their excrement or what comes out of them. Tzo'atam, related to the root yod tzadi and aleph, to come out. Okay, so they changed it, and it continues. velishtot.
ולשתות
Yeah. To drink.
את
You see, you cannot really read this. This looks off, right? The vowel pointing here obviously does not. You see what we have here? It looks off. It's not the vowel pointing for this word. It is the vowel pointing of the Ketiv. Of the Qere, I mean, of the way it should be read, not the way it is written. So when I'm reading this, I'm reading le'echol et tzo'atam velishtot et meimei raglehem. Meimei raglehem. Again, it says to eat their feces, but I'm reading it to eat their what comes out of them, and to drink. It says their piss, if you will, but I'm reading it the water of their feet. The water at their feet, the water of their feet, which is a nicer way to say their urine. Okay, so this is one of the examples.
So it makes
By
it
no
polite.
means, just a second. Yeah, it's out of politeness, out of making the text less explicit. This is one of the motivations for the phenomenon of Ketiv and Qere. By no means this represents the majority. It's a minority. It's a small amount of cases in comparison to the size of this phenomenon. If you want to read more about this phenomenon, I recommend the book of Professor Emmanuel Tov, Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible. In the last edition, he even mentions me by name. So he mentions a paper I submitted to him as a graduate student back then. So I recommend the book, not because of that. And if you're interested just in this part, let me know, and I'll see if I can send you like the relevant information about this. In many cases, the motivation is grammatical or lexical to make to maybe update the language, maybe make it more grammatically relevant. But regardless of the traditional, if you would ask the people at Art Scroll, which represented oftentimes a very, very traditional view of these questions, they would tell you originally there were two like I guess this is what they would say. I don't know if it's for sure, but there is a good chance that they would tell you, oh, originally that was intentional, that they had two versions. One of them was the read version and the other was the written version. I don't think it's very convincing, but this is probably the explanation that you would get from Art Scroll. Call them, ask them, listen, I saw you had in your edition something with that, the vowel pointing. What's that? Let's see what. Yeah. Okay, so that's oh, you're holding the book, Georgie. If you're holding that book, I cannot see it. It's out of focus, but I would guess that you're holding the book that I mentioned.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it. Let me try. If it is this book, is it the textual basis of English translations of the Hebrew Bible?
No, not that one. No,
Okay.
not that one. The textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible, or it's the one of the best, if not the best, introduction to textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible, and it looks. Just a second, I will show you how it looks because I have it. Just a second. I also have the Hebrew version, but I have an English version. Yeah. Not this one, but this is also in a good book by Emmanuel Tov. In it, textual criticism. Looks like this, guys. This is the cover. Bear with me for a second. This is how it looks. Okay. This is how it looks. Recommend the book. This is the second revised edition. Here you will not find my name. In the third edition, I think you'd find it. So yeah. Anyway, that's a little bit about your question, Gary. By no means this was exhaustive, but I you know, I'm sure I exhausted you guys. No, not the question. Okay. Right. So very good. Ketiv and Qere,